Welcome to episode 82 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak with Raphaël Pothin, an MVP and a user and consumer of netbooks, Jupyter Notebooks. I had no idea really what this was before talking to him, and so this was a very introductory level for me, and it was very helpful for me. And if you're all trying to see what are notebooks, how can they be used, and anything along those lines, this is definitely a great episode for you. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and Scott still loves Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Duro. Scott, how's it going?
No. Oh, you have to bring that up, given our guest.
Of course I
really.
do. Yes, yes. I know you got some Teenage Mutant Turtle like pajamas. I'm sure maybe like a splinter pillow or something. I know you do.
Yeah, my duvet. Yeah, my pillow. It's fun memories. Fun memories.
I remember getting the turtle blimp when I was little. The thing was like huge. It was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the animated figures and it's fun memories of watching the original movies. Obviously, the original stuff, right? We're that old, and none of this newfangled.
Yeah, I didn't like the first movie, but the second one was that one I really liked that one. So I still haven't showed my kids that one. I don't know how I need to do that. I need to rectify that maybe this weekend.
It's just a bit of ancient history. That's what you were showing them. It was like a history lesson it's like this is the evolution. I just remember seeing it. I watched one of the movies. I can't remember which one it was fairly recently, and just being appalled at the animatronics of Splinter in the cage when he was a little rat. Sort of just these little this rat learning kung fu. It was just awful. It really was.
It had to be a puppet, wasn't it? It wasn't animatronics, right?
Well, I mean, no, it was just like, I don't know, you could almost see the wires. Somebody,
Yes. Yep. I mean, who cares? We're kids. We didn't care about, perfection.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, back when people could make movies that weren't quite so amazing and would still be good, So anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And not all this like ultra realistic CG. Yeah, my youngest son was watching some kind of show on TV last night. I went in there and I was marveling at the CG and just silent to himself, thinking, "Wow, look at this! It's really cool." And then he was like, "Oh, Dad, the CG isn't very good on this one." It shows you what I know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
people are entitled to things. My wife asked my 8-year-old, "Hey, do you want to go out to eat to this place?" And he asked how many stars does it have on Google reviews. I was like, "Oh my goodness, yes. Oh my goodness!" My 8-year-old is concerned about the star rating of the restaurant. All right,
Chateau de Pape 5 on 5. Yes, thank you very much.
I'll believe you. So our guest today, Raphaël Pothin, is a Microsoft BizApps MVP, a Power Platformer, a DevOps. It's a hashtag DevOps. I'm trying to think of how do I say that? A DevOpsers, a pro coder, no code uniter, Power Editor, a Power Platform, D365 CE specialist, and all his opinions are his own as opposed to somebody else's. So, Raphaël, thanks for joining us.
Hi. Thank you for the invitation.
Welcome to the show.
You probably gave me the most difficult introduction Twitter thing. I probably should have reread it a few times first before going through that.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's not great for podcasts like that.
Come on, you need to change it just for me.
Yeah, I need to change it a little bit, I guess.
Oh man, so I was reading a chat that was going on, and we were talking about this newfangled thing called notebooks. And I was like, I know what notebook is. It's like the paper and some lines and stuff like that. And apparently, that is not what this is. So I don't know how many of our. I'm going to assume that all of our listeners are at the same point I am, but I could be wrong in that. So, what is this newfangled notebook thing that's been happening? And tell us about it. What's up with this?
I'm not sure it's new for everyone. It's perhaps new for the Power Platform Dynamics 365 communities.
For anyone that's not quite as into things as I am, then they'd explain it to us. Then.
for people in the data science communities and things like that, it's definitely not new. But it's a way to combine documentation in Markdown language and also code cells you can run one at a time. So you will combine that and you will have kind of interactive documents. You will be able to run cell, move variable from one cell to another one, and do more and more complex things. You can also, for data science people and more advanced people, draw graphs based on a lot of data. So I think it's a powerful and a bit unknown tool. And it's why I try to explore this part of the IT world to see if it can help our communities.
Okay, so it's for combining code and documentation kind of together. Then is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
and you can. I think today you can run it interactively, so you will have open on your desktop. You will go through it, run each cell one at a time, or run all the cells and try to understand the results, the outputs. Or you can even run it automatically in Azure, for example. You have some way to, based on a trigger, run it, have all the outputs, put that in a storage account, for example, and take a look later. So
okay,
it's like those things like CodePlex, not CodePlex, CodePen, and REPL and things like that. Like, because REPL stands for, is it read, eval, print, loop or something? Anyway, but it's like a kind of like a paradigm where you've got code that's executable and editable in the same place. I always find those like hugely beneficial when you're learning something, especially if, like, if you go to Stack Overflow or whatever, a forum, and someone gives you some kind of explanation of what they mean. It's like, okay, yeah. And then there's like try it now, or like you click on here to go open up a code pen, and it has an example of running code and allows you to then actually fiddle with it inside the browser and see the effect. For me, that's like the show me the code kind of moment. That's when everything starts to come to life, and it allows you to really learn and understand what they're saying. So is it, do you see it like that? Do you see it like as a primarily as a learning tool alongside your documentation? Is that how you've been?
At the beginning, I tried to explore this technology more for support scenarios. So, for example, if you are in a big company, you have often the different level of supports, and the first one don't often know all the different background stories around your solutions, for example. So giving them this kind of notebooks and documentation with interactive code can help resolve quicker some issues or incidents without going through all the support level organization. But I think learning is also a great scenario here. And myself, I've explored this path because working with the new Dataverse Nugget package in .NET Core, I've been able to try this new Nugget package inside the interactive notebooks and explore the different methods in it.
But a fellow MVP, Natraj, has created like an extension or a notebook which has got that same package running. I think he also added like a Playwright extension for it as well. Have you played around with that as well?
Yeah, I've tried it when he published it earlier this year, and the great thing he had done is that it created a kernel, because behind the scene what we use in notebooks are kernel, a PowerFX kernel to explore and learn PowerFX language. So I'm not sure it's up to date with the latest version of the PowerFX language, but it was, I think, a great use case, and I hope in the future we'll be able to improve this kernel, because going to Power Apps portal and things like that is great. But if we are able to have a learning path inside a notebook for people trying to discover more about PowerFX, would be great inside the notebook. Just like you mentioned, Scott, having some documentation and the code below and being able to trick it and change it to understand what it does, I think it's a great way to learn.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that this morning. For example, you could today do a similar thing in XRM Toolbox using SQL for CDS, for example. You can add comments. You create a SQL script. You will add comments. It will be your documentation. And you will add queries. And you will be able to run each queries at a time. It will be a similar approach. You will not have all the same capabilities because it will be only SQL, for example. And we have other capabilities in notebooks. But I was thinking at something that will talk more to the communities, and using SQL for CDS, you could try to do similar things.
That sounds very cool.
So the idea here is that you give it your code, whatever that code happens to be, including PowerFX, and it uses some machine learning of some sort to kind of like process that and then spit out what it's actually doing. Then is that a 5,000-foot view of it, or right misunderstanding that?
I think behind the scenes, your code cell will be run by the kernel. I'm not 100% sure how the kernel works behind the scene,
okay.
But perhaps you can try to think. It's like in Microsoft Learn portal, when you have the code panel on the right of the screen, you can write some code here, for example, on the .NET Learning Path, thing like that. And it will be, this code will be used in a main method inside .NET Code and run behind the scene to display things. So my basic understanding of the back end of notebooks is like that. Your code cell will be run in the kernel, and you will have the output display.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it would be nice to be able to execute PowerFX as a kind of a language, just in the same way as any other language, inside VS Code. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Interacting, but I think that the challenge there is obviously that the way that you run, you have to have that kernel running. It's like a C# parser and then processor. So that would have to be running as a service that then VS Code could then hook into and run it.
I think it's what Natraj have done. It's PowerFX language inside C# to be able to run PowerFX commands inside the notebook.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it. I have to check that out. So we can maybe put these links in for people to sort of check out themselves. But so when you're using the notebooks, where is the primary host? Where do you host them? Is it VS Code? What's the main place that you actually have these notebooks running?
Yeah, for the latest version, I've tried. It's with .NET Interactive Notebooks extension inside this VS Code. So when you install this extension, you will have .NET Interactive or installed on your laptop, for example, and then you are able to create a notebook. There are two extensions, the Jupyter Notebook basic extension and a new one just for .NET Interactive. And then you can build your notebook with your documentation and code cells. So it will run on your machine, or if you're, for example, I tried that also in GitHub Codespace, it's the same. So it's managed by the Visual Studio Code extension.
You've mentioned code cells.
Yeah.
What's a code cell? What is a code cell?
I'm not sure it's the official name, but what I call code cells is when you create a notebook, you can add different blocks, and you have two different type of blocks, one Markdown for the documentation and one code. So it's why I refer to code cells.
All right. So it's just the code
and in the code cells, you select a language. So, for example, in .NET Interactive Notebooks, you have C#, F#, and PowerShell, if I'm not wrong currently.
VB got the Heisman in that situation. Said no to VB.
No, not now, because I think it's
VB,
.NET
is that
Core.
still a thing? People still use VB? Do people
Yes,
really?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
You can try to build the
shows up in
kernel for
places.
that, but
So I don't know. Yeah, it was. I mean, so my very first job was VB6, and then we transitioned over to VB.NET like within that year, and then we transitioned over into C#. And I'm like, why are all the jobs for C# developers like $10,000 more a year than VB developers? It's the same. Like, there's hardly any difference to it, really. I mean, once you get over the syntax, it's all the .NET stuff. And my coworker's like, someone decided that C# developers should get paid more money. And it's our God-given right to take their money. That's what he said. So, yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, I haven't heard a lot of the. I would imagine with that Microsoft's really pushing more Power FX by far to people than VB anymore. But yeah, interesting. They haven't said they're going to try to keep up with it over and over and over again. But I assume at some point in time they may give up on that. All right, sorry, that was my VB.NET tangent.
Yeah, it's just an opinion piece there.
It's been a while. This is. You said this came primarily from the Azure data scientist people. So what did they create it for? What was their purpose for doing it? Do you know?
If I'm not wrong, they created that to be able to share their work between teams. So one person will build the notebook and try to add some documentation to explain what they are doing, and add some code, try to get some data from the cloud or from on-premises sources, and try to build some graphs, some analysis around that, and then being able to easily share this notebook to other people so that they can add more things. I think it was one of the primary goals of notebooks.
Okay. Will it actually run like machine learning? Okay, so you train the machine learning algorithm like to do something, and then will it run the results of that? So it will tell you kind of what it does. Is that probably where would it come from, or where would it be helpful in that situation? Because when you're doing machine learning stuff, like you're giving all this data, you have no idea what it's looking for or doing or anything else. You just look at the results. So would it be possible to be used in that situation?
Yeah, I think, for example, in my case, I often write documentation just before my code to explain what I will do. But I guess in the data science world, they also have a lot of documentation after the execution of the code to be able to explain the results. So, for example, they will write some graphs and things like that based on the data they get. And after that, they will try to make some interpretations, some analysis based on these results. I think it's a different world for sure, because their requirements and their needs are a bit more different.
Yeah, I mean that sounds very sensible from a research perspective. You're always trying to communicate your results and trying to make pretty documents and so if you can anything that can make that more efficient rather than having to take screenshots of graphs and all of that kind of diagrams and stuff, if you can actually have something that's actually the code that you're using to produce the graph embedded inside your document, it's kind of like the ideal as built document, isn't it? It's like as built because it is exactly what we have built, and here's some comments and descriptions to go alongside. But I'm just wondering, I'm just thinking to sort of the kind of code that we write, maybe in Power Platform type extensions. Do you think there would ever be a time where you would want to kind of have that level of, or you had that level of complexity in your code that it would warrant that kind of report being written? I mean, you mentioned, Raphaël, about the support scenario, right? So were you talking specifically about like trying to teach people how a particular piece of code works? Was that the way you were thinking?
No, it was operational support for your application in production. So, for example, you have someone who is not an expert on your application, doesn't know all the functional pieces or the technical pieces, but receives the support request from the end users, and being able from a category field or another field in the support request to identify, okay, it's this kind of issue. I know that I need to run this notebook to be able to get insights on the issue and help me resolve the issue. I'm thinking about that for now, but I'm sure there's more scenarios.
Sort of, so like making updates to the database, to the Dataverse to kind of fix a particular problem. That's the kind of sort of, so it's more like a set of tools that support would use to resolve a particular problem.
Yeah. In the GitHub repository I initialized, I gave one example. For example, you have one user telling they have access issues for some tables or some records or things like that, and you are able to run the notebook and to get the security roles of the users, the teams as the user are in the environment, to be able to have an overview quickly. Okay, perhaps here is the issue or not. Because for sure you can go inside the portal and check a few things, but you need to know a little bit where to go to find the information. And here the person just runs a notebook and have a summary of the situation, perhaps helping to take a decision on what needs to be done. For example, okay, I can resolve the issue myself, or I need to push to the level 2 support or level 3 support. The issue.
That sounds that sounds very powerful way of kind of formulating and standardizing the way that people do things, which is sometimes
and also the next step, because it was what I listened at the beginning was you receive your support request inside your system, depending on the system, and then you will have, for example, in Azure, a Logic app triggering, run the notebook in Azure Automation, and push the result inside the storage account, and push the link inside the support request. So you don't even have to run the notebook yourself. You will be the level 1 support in your organization. The support request will be created. You will get some insights directly in it, being able to check the notebook results and understand, okay, here is the issue or not. And another next step is based on some rules. For example, you have remediation scenario. So I understand that this person has missing security role, for example. The notebook you have the analysis, and you understand which security role is missing. You check some rules, for example. Is this person eligible to have this security role? Yes. Okay, I will add the security role directly.
That sounds cool.
Some crazy ideas I have in mind. I didn't try it yet, but I just like you mentioned, Scott, I think there are many ways this technology can be useful inside organizations. To have consistency on the support processes and things like that.
Yeah, and I think it's that combination of the machine readable stuff combined with the human readable thing, which I think is that makes it very utilizable from so many different jobs. So is there a way of passing in kind of parameters to, because like you mentioned sort of automatically running a story, an interactive notebook, and then getting the results and looking at the results. So is there some way of sort of providing like a parameter to a notebook?
Currently, there is one way inside Visual Studio Code. So you have one syntax that allows you to have a prompt to enter some data to be able to continue with your variables. I didn't explore more to see how you can do that inside Logic apps, for example, for some automation, to be able to pass parameter and then, for example, target one user to be able to get some insights on it. But yeah, inside Visual Studio Code, and I use that, for example, to get the login and password of the current user to be able to connect to Dataverse and get the data. So you have this really interactive way to get some parameters, a bit like PowerShell, for example, when you or console.NET app, where you prompt the user to enter some information to be able to continue.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool.
You mentioned it as being something to help support representative to go through and handle something, an issue. Would it ever be something that would be public facing, or kind of another way to be like a self-help thing for an individual? You think, or not? Like, oh, this is how the system works. I need to do this.
It could be, for example, if we come back to the scenario where it's automatically run inside Logic App and you get the result inside the support request, for example, you could have more intelligent thing telling the user, okay, there is no issue in the configuration of your environment. Perhaps check the documentation to see you are doing something wrong or you are missing something here. But I guess often if there is an issue, someone with the right access will need to take action. So the user itself can't do that. But yeah, perhaps in some scenarios, if it's an issue between the user and his laptop, we could give him some information to say, here is a good documentation to do what you want to do. And perhaps you are missing something, just check and come back if you need more help.
All right. So it's kind of, I was thinking like it would be like you can almost use it like a self-diagnostic sort of thing. Hey, do I have any issues with what's going on then? Kind of the first level kind of thing. I'm thinking for some reason it's popped in my head, Star Trek Next Generation with Data. And he always has issues. When he has issues, he's like, I'll run a self-diagnostic. Never, ever finds any issues, but it always does it. And I'm just like, how is that supposed to work? How is it supposed to, if he's so smart that he could do all these things, how does he know when he has an issue? So anyway, but maybe.
Yeah, but for me, for the end users, sometimes it's a bit difficult. I guess, for example, if we continue on that road, you have some integrations with Azure components and one link is broken, for example, the network configuration or things like that. And you are using this integration inside a web resource, for example. For me, if you have an issue, perhaps there is a notebook that will be run automatically behind the scene to give some insight to the support team. But for the end user, I'm not sure it would be useful to know more than, we have seen we have an issue, we already launched some investigation, and we'll come back to you later. I'm not sure. Perhaps there are some scenarios where self-investigation is interesting, but I like the way that the end user is only informed. Okay, we detected we have an issue. The support team or the administrators are already informed, and some diagnostics are running behind the scene right now. But I'm not sure it's interesting to give more information to end users.
I always appreciate the sites that have some information about something went down or it's not working, and hey, we're working on it. Like that's always very helpful as an end user of whatever it is, like a streaming service or something or other. Oh yeah, okay, we're having an issue.
Yeah,
we'll let you.
This one is great, but I really don't like the one that say, okay, you have permission issue because you missed the permission 3 on the entity table. Yeah, this one is less great for end users.
Yeah, that would be nice to be able to take that and just say, here, what does this mean? I frequently have to go to my old blog post on it to say, wait, how do I interpret this stuff again? Oh yeah, that's all I do, because I don't normally have to handle it. So.
Is when I used to do on-premise work with dynamic CRM back in the day, it was sort of, I'd always have like 101 different SQL scripts that you kind of run against the database to just check stuff, right? And you kind of run them on a regular basis just to check things that generally go wrong. Like people are mucking stuff up that have caused problems. So it was the sort of the things that you couldn't really justify doing the same thing as you're mentioning, Daryl, of having like a self-diagnosis, automatic fix type thing. But yet they're the things you want to know about before they become a real problem. So having an interactive notebook, which allows you to kind of do that stuff, which is the barrier to entry is quite low. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's not, you don't have to go and write some kind of special diagnosis program and then have it, have it hosted somewhere and have it, it's just a Markdown document really with some code in it, and and it's just one thing, one document that then you can run anywhere basically.
Yeah, and you have the knowledge around the code too, because
exactly.
Writing a notebook with just title and code, I think it's useless. You lost the capabilities of the technology.
Well, that was my problem with these SQL scripts, is that I would go back to them like in even a couple of days and look at them and think, what was I thinking? I have no idea what that is. It's gonna take me way too long to even work out what it does. So I'm just gonna, just quietly move it over to one side and ignore it until I remember suddenly that I needed it.
With what you were saying, Scott, I was thinking about perhaps one valid scenario. I don't know if it's a valid one, but when you have many system jobs in the waiting state, because I don't know why you have some Azure Service Bus integration not working anymore or things like that. I think today, perhaps you can do some monitoring with Cloudflow, with a Cloudflow running every hour, checking the number of waiting system jobs and perhaps raising an alert if you find that. It's one way to do it, but perhaps in the near or future, we will be able to run notebooks and doing the same thing. So for me, it just add one tool inside the end of people to handle different kind of situations like that.
And I can really see now where your idea about using SQL for CDS starts to become attractive, because that would suddenly make the code that you would need to be able to you'd have to put in there a lot simpler, because especially if you're just monitoring particular records.
Yeah, but for SQL for CDS, you will not be able to run it automatically in Azure, for example. You have a similar approach compared to the interactive way inside Visual Studio Code. But just like I mentioned, I think SQL for CDS currently, if you try to do the same, you will reach some limits at some point based on what you want to do. But it's always the same right now with the Power Platform. You have many tools you can use to do the same thing, but then depending on some details of your requirements, you will reduce your options and need to choose one.
Well, watch this space then, I guess. We'll have to, let us know when you've come up with the answer, and we can come back on again and describe what it is.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be the simplest, like most least effort and fairly decent bang for the buck sort of use for somebody that's hasn't used a notebook before, hasn't done that before? What scenario can you think of, especially as someone that's in the Dataverse Power Platform realm? What would you recommend?
How to start or how to learn to do things?
What would be the first thing? You're dealing with this. If you used a notebook here, you'd really see some benefit from it. So what's the use case? What's like a use case for someone that, this is a point where I can apply this tool?
To help you take the decision to use a notebook versus other things. Because, for example, my current scenarios with configuration of a user or something else, I think you are currently able to do this with SQL for CDS or with Cloudflow to check some configurations. So basically, this one, all the options are still open. But to think about one, just currently the only one I see would be for learning opportunities, because if you want to learn how to use the Dataverse Nugget package, for example, in .NET, using a .NET Interactive Notebook would be the best way to start, even if in your organization, if you want to build some learning path specific to you using this code, it would be a great way. And you can't have that inside Cloudflows or inside SQL for CDS.
Okay. I think I may have come up with something.
Oh, yeah. I can continue. Let's go.
So, unit testing. Sometimes people don't do that, and so I'm wondering. Sometimes, many times, and some of the things that I do are a little bit unusual, I guess. And I'm wondering if that would be a way to be able to provide some examples of documentation that they could then run in, while they're going through and learning it. Would that be something that might be a use case of that, or might be helpful in that case? Or am I way off?
Unit testing for your .NET code, you mean?
So for developers that are using like my unit testing framework, helping them to utilize it and to see what features it has and how to use a feature, or maybe just
for learning for sure.
For them to learn how to use it, yeah.
But do you need to be plugged to a .NET project linked to a Dataverse, to a .NET project, for example, for plugins like that, to be able to run tests?
You don't need to have anything external. Everything's internal, so everything can just run in normal .NET. No outside dependencies. Yeah,
all that for sure. But is it .NET Core?
No, it can be. It's both. I mean, it's both. I got both. Both. I'm getting all fancy. I got some .NET Core now, even though you can't.
Currently .NET Interactive Notebooks. .NET Interactive Notebooks, I think, run only on .NET Core.
Cool.
Code. But yeah, if you have this option, definitely it would be a way to help people learn.
Yeah. All right. There's querying Dataverse. I've got lots of extension methods to help people query Dataverse stuff. That's like, this is way less code, way easier, way easier to read. And I'm wondering if one is something like that would be something that would say, hey, I'm trying to do this. How do I do that? And have that kind of a little helpful code thing they could run and say, oh, this generates a SQL. Good. And they can move on from there. So anyway, I got an idea for it. So that's good. I don't need time to execute on the idea, but I have an idea.
Yeah, learning opportunities, I think it's a great way to start for this kind of. And even I'm thinking about Power Apps CLI or Azure CLI too. You can try to help people learn like that. Not for the Power Apps administration PowerShell module, because it's not PowerShell core, so you can't run it inside the .NET Interactive Notebook, but for the other one, it can help. And even the COE CLI, I think you can use that. So you can have notebooks like that to help people learn different kind of tools available. And then if you want to bring some automation in other scenarios, like support or administration, it could be the next steps.
All right, cool. Well, Raphaël, I went from knowing nothing about notebooks to knowing just a little bit more about them, and probably trying to apply them in cases that they shouldn't be applied at all. So I appreciate you helped me to gain that next step of knowledge to be able to even ask questions that make sense. So that's beneficial for me. Hopefully it's beneficial for our listeners as well. But let's get off of the notebook stuff and let's hear a little bit about you. You've been the MVP for rather short. Is it been 2 years? How long have you been MVP?
March 2021. So a bit more than a year. Yeah.
Just more than a year. So you've had your first year MVP birthday. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
They got the card I sent you. How was your journey into MVP-ness, and how's that been going, being one for a year now?
I think I started in an event in Tampa. I've been lucky enough to be selected to have 2 sessions there. So I've discovered the world of community event, and it was amazing. So I continued from there, started some open source projects on GitHub, started a small blog, small YouTube channel, but not much on it. But I'm focusing more on GitHub and events, and continued like that. Events in France. So I'm a member of the organization committee of the Power Platform French Summit. We have our 3rd edition this year. So I like to share my crazy ideas, because I think I often when I talk to people, and even in my company, I see that I'm trying sometimes to explore things, and companies and even the communities are not ready for this kind of crazy things sometimes.
They're not prepared for what you're bringing to this world. Okay.
yeah. But I have ideas. I want to explore it, and I continue like that. And I hope one day perhaps it will help someone, and it's enough for me. So I like this part. And if you go to my GitHub, you will see sometimes some strange things, but always around Power Platform. Yeah.
Like many great innovators, you'd be before your time. That's what it is. It's
kind of a mad scientist at Dataverse.
I hope so, but I continue like that, and I focus on events and open source contributions. And
lots of times you don't know what the great idea is until you've tried it. So you may have to try 6 or 7 for actually this is really good, and go from there. So that's great.
Even if these initiatives are not really useful, I learned so much doing that. For me, at least, it's great. But
it may not help anybody else.
Next step,
you learn something.
The next step is, if someone else is happy with it, it's great. But at least I learned many things.
Totally. Anything else that we need to cover? Anything else you want to share or talk about? You have anything in the pipe? Any crazy idea you're currently working on? Like what's going on?
Regarding the topic, just like I've mentioned earlier in the
topic, or if you got some great thing that we should have asked you about that we didn't, like you're going to the White House today, we didn't know that, like whatever.
Are you going to be speaking at any events soon, or?
For events, I think I will have 2 lessons for the Zero to Hero initiative around ALM. Later this year, we have the Power Platform French Summit in November. We organize in France, Paris. I've submitted sessions for the Tampa event in November too, but I don't know if I will go there. So few things for the end of the year. And regarding the projects, the Power Platform Notebook GitHub repository I initialized. If some people want to contribute and share ideas, even in issues or discussions, it's an open project. So I would be happy to discuss with people here. And also I continue to work on my Power Platform ALM with GitHub repository to prepare when people will be ready to move to GitHub for their ALM work on Power Platform.
All right. So is that when I'm ready to abandon Azure DevOps and move over to GitHub? I need to go to your project then?
I'm not sure it's the main one, but it's one option you can consider for sure if you want to move from Azure DevOps to GitHub. You can take a look.
I kind of feel frustrated because I didn't do Azure DevOps for so long, and then like a year ago, I kind of all right, cool. I figured out how to do YAML and build all this stuff, and then I'm like, I think everyone's going to GitHub. Why did I kind of feel like I learned Silverlight in 2015. I'm like, it's like what? Why did I do that?
Still transferable, Daryl. I mean, a lot of that stuff is
and I think currently you need to know both. You need to know Azure DevOps and GitHub in the Power Platform space. But for my own open source projects or things like that, I love GitHub because it's great out built. But at work, I use Azure DevOps, so I continue to
both worlds
to learn on both.
And those of you that are not watching on YouTube, if you're not, by the way, we do have a YouTube channel, so you can get us on YouTube at XRM Toolcast. So you can definitely subscribe to that and get notified. But if you're not watching, if you listen to us, you won't see that Raphael's got a really cool T-shirt on. So tell us a little bit about your T-shirt.
Yeah, it's a T-shirt made after the death of Abel Wang. He was a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and he died, I think, last year from a long battle against cancer. And other colleagues at Microsoft, I've done an initiative around some t-shirts and hoodies to help some associations Abel was supporting. So don't accept the default. It's the phrase you can see on it, and I love the phrase, and I think it's an important message to share with the world for many aspects today. But yeah, don't accept the default, and it helps support some communities.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll get to put a link to that in the podcast notes so people can check out those. That initiatives. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, Raphaël, I appreciate your time with us today. Our listeners won't know the hecticness of my day today, and the fun of being asked by my wife to go do something and then completely botching that and having to go do it again, and having us start 20 minutes late. So I appreciate Scott, you as well. I appreciate you guys being very patient and me dealing with things of life, things with having a wife.
These things happen.
Family. Things happen.
Yeah, sure.
Things happen. So, and thanks for coming on and teaching me. Frankly, I had no idea kind of what was going on with this, and so now I got a much better idea, and so that's very, very helpful, and hopefully our listeners will appreciate that as well. But great meeting you virtually here, and
Same.
and hope to have you on again for whatever one of these crazy ideas that you have that you're working on. So
definitely. Thank you for the opportunity for being here and being able to share one of my crazy ideas.
Yeah. So you've mentioned your GitHub. How else can our listeners get a hold of you, or how else can they follow you?
Twitter, Twitter and GitHub, the main place where I'm active currently.
Awesome. Well, Scott, that's how our listeners can get a hold of our guests. How can they get a hold of us?
Well, yes, you can get a hold of us quite easily, actually, Daryl, as you mentioned it. So you can email us at cast@xrmtoolbox.com, or you can get us on Twitter and LinkedIn at xrmtoolcast. And please do get in touch. And as I mentioned earlier, if you've not checked out our YouTube, you can watch us and see our various different crazy expressions and the t-shirts people are wearing and plants that we have in the background and irrelevant things like this.
All irrelevant, but all relevant. So. All right. Well, I'll see you guys later. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks, Raphaël, for coming on.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl Labar and Scott Durrell, produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @XRM Toolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.